Welcome back to Pagan Valley, everyone. Tonight's video is one that I have been sitting on for a while now. The Backrooms sprung up out of nowhere this year, and it seemed everyone in the community was talking about it. When it came out, I had watched it and thought it was an awesome video, especially since I have been into the Backrooms for well over a year now. In fact, the Backrooms was going to be a topic I covered in the early days of my channel, but got put to the side because I thought it was too niche of a topic. So the first video came out and I had been writing a quick review for it, with my thoughts on the project. And then a second video came out and expanded what felt like a one-off story of someone escaping the Backrooms. Then other channels started explaining the videos as a series, but they were coming out so fast it seemed like as soon as one explained video was uploaded, a new video in the series came out. So I sat back and watched, and waited some more. Until I just figured enough time has passed that not too many people were still talking about the Backrooms, and I could explain more than just 2 or 3 videos. I like making the longer videos, and I know all of you like watching them, so that's why I waited. So I won't waste any more of your time, and let's quickly do a jump or spin on our closest wall and enter the Backrooms. So what are the Backrooms? Well, before we dive into the series this video will be discussing, I want to provide some context on the topic. The Backrooms is a creepypasta turned SCP turned internet phenomenon because of one simple post on my favorite board on my least favorite website. The concept is that outside the boundaries of our reality, there is this place that can't be entered easily. Based on the concept of no clipping that can be done to get past the boundaries of video games, a person can enter this maze-like nightmare that has little to no chances of escaping, wandering around empty offices, apartments, and other uncanny places. That uncanny feeling the Backrooms create is called canopsia, which has inspired a community around these places, naming them liminal spaces. A similar phenomenon where abandoned or forgotten places can provide nostalgic and eerie feelings to those who have experienced those places before their demise, such as an old office or a shopping mall. It's honestly kind of a genius idea that perfectly encapsulates that feeling of liminal spaces. And I will mention that there is a very large lore surrounding the Backrooms today, containing dozens of levels, but it would take too long to go through them all. But hopefully this is enough context before what you are about to see. So sit back, relax, and make sure to check your surroundings, because we're leaving the comfort of our reality and entering the Backrooms. The first video in the series that went absolutely viral was simply called The Backrooms Found Footage. In its description, we are given a date of recording, September 23rd, 1996, establishing a timeline we'll use later. More interesting is a link in the description to another video that is unlisted on the channel. So yeah, time for us to do what Steve always said and keep our eyes out for clues through the videos, because this is going to turn into a mess of information. But we'll come back to this after the first video and see what it offers. For now, I assume most of you have seen this first video, so I will move a little faster through it, highlighting any specific details. The video begins with a group of teens filming a short film in their neighborhood. Their director tells the cameraman to get a wide shot to wrap up the scene. When stepping back, our cameraman seems to have missed their step on the street's curb, and they end up no-clipping into the Backrooms where we get our title card. As our character begins to wander through the Backrooms, we can immediately see how the creator made sure to nail every detail regarding the Backrooms, including the mustard yellow maze of walls and the fluorescent lights with their loud, ominous humming. We get some excellent jump cuts as the character goes deeper into the maze of rooms, but something seems to be following him and he captures this.
Hello? Is someone there?
That was definitely something watching our cameraman, but he seemed to not have noticed. They continue on until they enter a room with a ladder leaning against the wall. At the top is a new path for the cameraman to crawl through. Naturally, they take the small path in the wall and crawl out into an identical room to everywhere else he has been. Still venturing on into the offices, the cameraman finds some red arrows painted on the walls and decides to follow them, which leads him to this set of drawings and writings on the wall. Then this happens. After successfully escaping that monster, our character has fallen to what I think most people will guess is level 2 of the Backrooms. The idea is still the same as the level above, being an infinite maze, but now in a new location. We follow him to the end of the room and he is given several different paths to go down. He chooses the stairs and then watches lights flip on and off before heading upstairs to the new level. Now in what looks like an abandoned apartment complex, we then get to see another classic image that is used to illustrate the next level of the Backrooms. It looks like other rooms seem to be occupied across the courtyard. We continue on and our cameraman begins to hear the familiar sounds of the monster we saw earlier, or worse, something he hasn't encountered yet. Let's take a listen.
What the fuck? This isn't real. This isn't real.
After hearing that, he continues roaming this next level until they find an exit door in a large hallway. Obviously, they try it as an exit and it opens to a stairwell to another door. After opening that next door, and to our and the cameraman's disappointment, it brings him back to the first level of the Backrooms. As they now continue on back in the offices, he hears the familiar noise of the monster from before. They immediately dip into this small room to hide. As they try to escape, they end up being caught by the monster before falling down another passage in the floor. Only this time, they no-clip once again back to our world, but now from the sky. While our cameraman is definitely a bloodstain in some poor bastard's backyard, his camera survives the fall before the video ends. It's no surprise why this video became popular. It brought to life probably one of the most terrifying concepts in recent years in a realistic way. But before we move on, I didn't really describe the rules of the Backrooms before this video because I thought it did a pretty good job of subtly giving them to you if you are unfamiliar. There is only one way in and only one way out of the Backrooms, and that is by no-clipping. However, your option to try and no-clip is incredibly risky, as when you return to the real world, it can be literally from any spot in reality, like the sky for example. This is a fun short film and I appreciate all the work that went into it, but as you can tell by the runtime, we still got a lot more to get to. Now obviously the next videos don't follow the blood splatter the cameraman has turned into, but it does play on another part of the Backrooms' story. Since the concept's inception, writers like the ones in the SCP have created stories of government scientists attempting to understand and explore the Backrooms. Some of these projects grow as complex to include full militaries, cities, and citizens that live within the backrooms, but we're not talking about all that in this video despite it being very unique. But in this series, it's definitely going to be more focused on the government research idea. So before we move on, let's go to that unlisted video that was in the description. Clicking it brings up a video with a title based on a file name called March 11th, 1990 Archive. I'm assuming the 90 is the year the images were taken and the video was made in 1991 like the description says, just to be clear. When the video starts, it gives us access to a compilation of images collected by a research team that are obviously confidential. We see images of the backrooms, close-ups of the technology being used, censored photographs of the scientists, and machinery being moved into the backrooms by them. But at 2 minutes into the video, the presentation gives us some instructions regarding a sector of the backrooms called Null Zone 4. The instruction reads, "Due to the elevation discrepancy between panel 225 and 234, a small KX field is created." Lastly, our video gives us a shot of some machine these secret scientists have created, and there our archive video ends. So what is a null zone? Well, these get explained in a later video, but for now just know it's like a research base in the backrooms. The next video on the channel is titled The Third Test, and in the description we are given a new date, July 2nd, 1988. So what we are about to watch was recorded 2 years before the last one, when the scientists have begun exploring the backrooms. This video begins with a narrated presentation regarding the machine we saw earlier. According to the presentation, the scientists we saw are part of a research group called the Async Foundation. Their director is a man named Ivan Beck, and they are presenting their machine called the Low Proximity Magnetic Distortion System to the US government for funding. Also, we are told the purpose of the research is to use the backrooms as an infinite space for storage and housing for the United States. That's right. The future goal is to have regular people move into the places we saw earlier. The presentation concludes with the third test of the system, which shows us this. So did the machine work for this test? We see the glow of the yellowish office and its lights, and we know that in a couple of years they're going to start moving equipment in. So it must have been close enough for the Async Foundation to get that government money. Our next video is titled First Contact, and again we get a new date and new video link in the description. Again, we will look at that link after this video. But what we are about to see is taking place directly after the test before in the year 1989. This one gives us an FBI warning, so immediately we know the government is now involved with the research. It's followed by the Async logo before telling us that this is test number 6. We then get some footage of machinery running as a song is played through the laboratory. And the song, as muddled as it is, began giving me PTSD to the video I just uploaded because I think it's the song Daisy Bell, which is a classic in analog horror. The song actually has a wild history, but I already made a video about it, so I'll put a card right here. After we get footage of the lab we saw earlier from a handheld camera before switching to security footage. Async is going to test the device again, but this time whatever was reading as a failure causes a problem for the device, resulting in, well, this. Our scientists have successfully entered the backrooms by pushing the system to its absolute limit, nearly destroying the device in the process. So the years of research has paid off, and the government now has developed a way into the backrooms without no-clipping. It also looks like the system also was able to design a map of a part of the backrooms the device opened up. And honestly, I really like the touch of having a few of the scientists begin to panic, while one pushes forward and keeps running the test, leaving us this ominous image of a bridge between the safety of our world and the nightmare we encountered in the first video. But my favorite part is the second link in the description, which takes the viewer to a news coverage of the real-life earthquake that occurred in 1989 in the San Francisco Bay Area. But in this story, the earthquake was caused by the Async device creating the portal to the backrooms. It's cool that the series is using a real event to ground the story into reality, and our newscast gives us a location of where the earthquake occurred and where we can guess the Async lab is. It's near San Francisco and San Jose. Our next video takes place 1 year later on February 3rd, 1990, and is called Missing Persons. Just like the title says, the beginning gives us several missing person flyers with names before showing us a chart of the number of people going missing since the Async device turned on. Perhaps whatever the machine did to open the doorway has also made it easier for regular people near the lab to accidentally no-clip into the backrooms. The video then cuts to camera footage from a scientist in the backrooms as a group traverses the offices in hazmat suits. They continue through the backrooms until coming up to a dead body that they investigate. I don't know for sure, but I think this body matches this missing person specifically, but let me know what you think. One of the scientists mentions that a fungus is growing on the body, which adds a whole other angle to this if there is now an infectious disease that exists in the backrooms. But during that investigation, the video suddenly ends, but not before showing a message that seemed to have been snuck into this tape. The message says, "If anybody, blame him." So we know these tapes are documenting Async's research into the backrooms, but this final message adds a new twist to that story. Is this a message from a scientist on the team? Maybe they aren't comfortable with what Async and the government is doing, and the consequences of their research. If this is the case, then who is him? As of right now, I'm guessing this message is referring to Async's director, Ivan Beck. Let's keep moving. Our next video is called Informational Video and begins like the company training tapes we have seen in other series. It begins by telling us that the project we have been seeing is called KV-31 and is the name of the machine Async made. Then there is this cheeky part of the tape that mentions titles related to the project, like Backrooms, but it also labels the Backrooms as the Complex, which is used to refer to the Backrooms later. Also, the tape tells us that scientists are supposed to travel in groups of 3, but our video then cuts to a new team entering the Backrooms. Since this tape was made on February 29, 1990 on a leap year, it has been a couple of weeks since that team found that dead body. During their trip, our scientist holding the camera gets lost from the group, but it's in a way where we don't really see how he gets alone. He kind of just does after looking at this clipped-in piles of dirt. Now alone, our scientist wanders into a new room with a large door in the wall. When he passes through, the office space ends and a new area is discovered. The walls are in old wallpaper, and deep in the new room is a plain ordinary house that looks to also be clipped into the Backrooms. Our investigator hears some noise from within the building and naturally turns back to the offices. After some more walking, the scientist sounds panicked but then relieved when he spots this door and window. Going inside reveals what we saw in the archive video where the scientist was looking out at the Backrooms. This is the Null Zone, and it's a sectioned off part of the Backrooms where the scientist can observe the halls. Our scientist makes it into this section, however when he goes in he triggers the intruder alarm, which probably thinks he is a monster from the Backrooms. It doesn't seem to bother him as he sets his case down and the video cuts. The last thing we see in the video is a detailed part of a map of the Backrooms the research base has drafted. It pans down to the Null Zone before the video ends, so we can assume our scientist is safe for now. Our next video is easily my favorite in the series, for obvious reasons if you have been watching my content for a while. It is called Autopsy Report, and it is taking place on February 5th, 1990. So if we remember, the missing persons video took place on February 3rd, and based on the title, it looks like the scientists took the body they found when exploring the Backrooms, who we guessed was one of the missing people. And this would take place before the last video we watched, which happened on February 29th. The video begins by giving us this title card, and we can assume that the body was not able to be recognized since Async labeled it John Doe. Now, a lot of this video is of a scientist explaining what they discovered in the autopsy of this body the scientists found. They mention that the subject is male, between 18 and 21 years old. They also guess the victim died 5 days ago, but can't say for sure because of tissue damage. The victim probably died from malnutrition, which makes sense because how is one going to find food in a maze of empty rooms? The scientist then mentions that when they recovered the digestive tract, they found that the decomposition process was stopped and that parts of the body stopped decaying and were sustained. They then take a sample of the body and at first think they found a regular strain of bacteria, but upon further investigation, believed to be a mutated strain. They also mention that this type of bacteria is supposed to be benign, meaning that it shouldn't be spreading through the body even when mutated. But in this victim, it isn't, and the scientist is easily concerned. But this is when the video reveals who the scientist performing the autopsy is talking to. Take a look.
Well, really, I don't know what to make of this.
Mr. Beck, may I ask where this subject came from?
Ivan Beck is present during this autopsy and refuses to answer the scientist's simple question. Async is hiding information from other parts of the Foundation that they don't want to get out, like what happened to this victim. And this is confirmed in the last part of the video, which shows a TV sitting on an office desk, flashing imagery from the Foundation's research, during which we get this snapshot of a classified document. On it, we can make out that Async lied to the US government and that the Backrooms is not a suitable space for humans to live in. And the tests are beginning to cause conflicts in the Foundation, and that Async wants to keep using this lie so the government keeps funding them. And based on the rest of what was shown on the TV, their research certainly isn't focused on storage space but on microbiology. So what is Async's true intentions? The next video is called Motion Detected and is taking place on March 5th, 1990. At the beginning, we see scientists constructing a new Null zone, like we saw Save Our Scientists back on February 29th. While they are working, we are shown that for safety and research, they set up motion detecting cameras to video capture things that move past them. We are then shown a map of the sector and how the cameras are angled to capture as much of the area as possible. We then are shown all the times the cameras captured something during the night on March 5th. The first ones are just of the scientist walking by, and then finally turning off the machine once all of them have left the back rooms, which one of the cameras captured the noise of. Now alone, this is when the cameras capture something strange. That definitely isn't the same creature we saw in the first video, and I don't think I even want to see what this monster looks like up close. But the important takeaway is that the Foundation is aware of this thing as they edit the video to zoom in. So will they take any action against it? Let's keep moving. Our second to last video is definitely one to create some more lore around the whole series, titled Prototype and taking place even earlier in the timeline in 1982, probably even before the Async Foundation was established. At the beginning, we see footage from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which is actually a real place in Tennessee you can look up. But under the direction of this Philip R. Hayman, the lab is about to attempt the first test of what would become the machine used by Async. The prototype holds a marble in its center and very briefly opens up the portal we have seen before, teleporting the marble potentially to somewhere in the back rooms before the scientists even knew what the back rooms were. So Async definitely wasn't the first to play with this technology, but we can bet that at least some of these scientists working on the prototype joined Async for their project. Our last video tonight is called Pitfalls, and it takes place after our motion detected video on May 6, 1990. So a few months have passed since the discovery of the body, and just like we guessed, the incident has not been recorded. The last video begins with scientists coming into work and suiting up before stepping into the back rooms. As they change, we hear one of the scientists say this: "Try to catch it."
Lost on focus switch and started buzzing. You were there.
Yeah, we just.
Nobody's coming.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it like that.
Yeah, you know, try to call down from Oak Ridge or the other universities around there. Yeah, it's difficult to people down here. You know, if you look at my timetable.
It's very difficult to make out, but I think one of the scientists says, "Do you know who's coming down from Oak Ridge?" At first, this might not make sense, but it will in a moment. But this one bit of dialogue confirms that Oak Ridge Laboratory does have ties to Async, and since Oak Ridge is a government-ran lab, Perhaps Oak Ridge were the ones who funded Async after their third test video. Before our cameraman leaves for the doorway, we see him pass a sign that says KV31CH3, KV31 being the name of the machine that opens the back rooms, but more interesting is the CH3 part. I think this means Chamber 3, meaning Async has created at least 3 different doorways to the back rooms since their first successful test. Which also makes sense, as in earlier videos we saw scientists walk through the doorway and enter different locations in the back rooms, and also explain why the maps we have seen always look a little different. We also get the names of 3 scientists. One is named Mark, one is George, and our cameraman is named Marv. When Marv enters the chamber with the others, he looks up to the observation window and we see one lone figure shadowed by the light. Immediately, we can assume this is Ivan Beck, and he's here for a specific reason, which is revealed in a moment. Marv and his team pass through and into a null zone constructed right on the doorway, observing the back rooms. Then the video cuts to the team heading towards a new null zone construction site. Along this walk, one of the scientists mentions something very odd.
Has the vertical expansion been approved yet?
They're not getting to that until after the presentation.
When does that go through?
Sorry, can you repeat?
What day will the tour be over?
From the 7th to the 10th.
When will the tour be over? Vertical expansion? Marv is asking when will Async begin to set up null zones in the lower levels, which we already know they will because in our first video, the kid who went to level 2 saw the scientist across the courtyard working. But even more interesting is the tour. This is what Mark had mentioned when they were suiting up. A group of scientists from Oak Ridge is coming to Async to tour the back rooms the next day on May 7th to the 10th. Which is why Ivan Beck is here personally to oversee the research chamber. After reaching the construction site, Marv's team begins to explore beyond where Async has mapped. When they turn a corner, they find a very upsetting room, and this is where things go from fascinating to terrifying. The room has dozens of holes in the ground and thin walkways to travel on. On the other side, there is a door that piques the curiosity of the team. Mark is the brave one to attempt to travel across and successfully make it to the other side. When he goes in, he says this.
Oh my god.
What do you see?
Everything okay?
Marvin, get the camera over here.
Across?
Fine, just hurry.
Okay. Sure, yeah. Okay, just, 1 moment, alright?
When Marv attempts to cross, something begins distorting the camera when this flashes over the recording for a moment, reading, "While data could be inferred from the readings, nobody knew what would actually be found on the other side." This is like that other message that was edited into the tape, but I want to hold off on this for now. Unfortunately, Marv does take a tumble down one of these holes, only to find himself in a new section of the back rooms. He looks around and notices the green wallpaper and similar architecture, before asking his team to drop him a safety line. They say it won't reach him and they will have to go get help, leaving Marv trapped in the new area. While he's down there, he begins to hear this.
Hang in there, Marv.
What was that?
What was what?
I don't know.
I didn't hear anything up here.
Sounded like... I think there's somebody down here.
What?
I hear yelling, like a person is yelling.
A person?
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Are you sure you're not just hearing us?
No, it's definitely not from you.
Just like what I thought, Marv hears what sounds like a real person calling for help somewhere down the halls, which immediately made me think of Gemini and how the wood crawlers could scream for help to lure prey into the woods. But hey, this is a whole different series, so maybe this is one of those missing people who have accidentally clipped into the back rooms. Marv's curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to venture off to find the person. He turns left at the first hallway and finds a weird gap on the far wall. Naturally, he looks down under it, but if you haven't seen the series yet, please go watch it for yourself, because this moment is when I decided to stop waiting and make this video because I had to talk about it. So this is like your spoiler warning. Behind the wall is a tunnel and a road, and Marv climbs through the gap to walk along it, which takes him to this place. An entire neighborhood with homes, trees, and working street lamps. This was not as planned for Async because Marv is obviously stunned and scared at what he sees. What is the Backrooms capable of? Because this area is technically not in the second level yet. So if one was able to maneuver through the yellow office spaces, would they find other eerie locations beyond the maze that are also clipped into reality? Honestly, I don't really care about the real life science that could explain all this, and I, like many others after this point, realized we only wanted to see more, as more questions about the backrooms are being presented rather than answered through these videos. But back to the tape, Marv begins to enter the neighborhood following the cry for help, which leads him to this house that when entered is filled with inverted signs. Also in the house is a long hallway that transitions back into the office space from before, except at the end of the hallway there are some items that definitely don't come naturally from the back rooms, like shoes and a backpack. Now certain there is a person in the house, Marv continues deeper until he finds this.
Down here.
Living down there? That's not possible.
Hey! Can you hear me? I think I got him.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Marvin?
That's not a person.
What is it?
That is not a fucking person!
What? Marvin, talk to me. What do you see? What's going on? Talk to us. What's happening? Marvin! George, come in! George, it's immediate! Marvin, what's going on?
Okay, I'm here. Set it down.
Gonna take a moment. Grab it like, yeah, hold it. Okay. Okay. Stand clear. We're setting it down.
Now in the safety of the pit he had fallen through, our video ends and we can bet that Marv has made it out alive. But did you catch what happened to Marv once he got close to the monster? He began to cough and he hadn't been before. Could this be the beginning of what the autopsy discovered on the first victim? Well, we don't get to find out. And here I had the script finished. But while editing, a new video was uploaded, so I've included the latest post in this video as well, so apologies if my audio sounds a little different in this segment. Our last video takes place on the same day as Pitfalls on May 6, 1990, and is called Report. In the description, we get a new link to an unlisted video which we'll look at last. We know from Pitfalls that the events that occurred took place in the morning because we saw the team suit up right when coming into work. Obviously, after Marv survived the encounter with that entity, his footage has reached the top of Async's leadership. So this video has two plots going on. The first is two older scientists reviewing the footage from Marv's camera, and the second follows this scientist as he moves through Async's building. We can watch as the scientists watching Marv's footage become aware of the real threat down in the back rooms. And the scientist we follow through the building stops and sends a phone call. It's hard to guess what the phone call was about, but I have two theories. One is that the phone call was to Oak Ridge regarding what was discovered by Marv, and the second is that the phone call is going to Ivan Beck, and the scientist is explaining that everything is being kept confidential besides the few people who are aware. The last part of the video shows Async's response to the discovery. The hallway where the room full of pits was found is boarded up, and the Null zones are then outfitted with blast doors for more protection as the team knows they are facing hostile threats. Also, I want to point out that the construction team working in the back rooms is not wearing hazmat suits like the others, so potentially this could signify that the bacteria infection the missing person had can only occur when in the presence of this dangerous creature, like when Marv started coughing by being near the entity in the last video. Finally, the link in the description takes us to one last unlisted video, which shows us a traffic camera filming a nearby interstate. All is normal until we see one car just suddenly no-clip off the road and into the back rooms. And I can't even imagine what that would look like as the driver, just going about your day and then just suddenly appearing in a set of rooms while still going at high speeds. So perhaps in a future video, a team of explorers will find the wreckage of this car that probably just barrel-assed through several sectors of the back rooms. Now before we put this all together, I want to quickly look at a couple of things. The first is Kane Pixel's community tab, which showcases a bunch of cool snapshots and photos from the series, as well as this teaser image for the last video we just watched. In it is a name tag that I bet introduces our next character in this series, Anthony Dawkins, who apparently has level 9 clearance, which if one of these two scientists watching Marv's footage is Anthony, then it would be great evidence that the scientists with high enough clearance are still keeping the discovery a secret. The second thing is the Ko-Fi link in all the video's descriptions, where following it takes you to the site where you can help support the series. On this site is a photo gallery where the creator has posted some images. Two are of interest to us. The first is called Extraction Point and shows a laboratory with a chamber. In it is a log cabin. Now it's hard to theorize what this image is showing, but based on the title and the desk looking at the chamber, I think this is a testing chamber that instead of sending things to the back rooms like the marble, the chamber brings things out of the back rooms, and they've tested it and brought an entire log cabin back, which means at some point they may be able to dial in on a person and extract them from the back rooms if something goes wrong. Again, this is just a theory from a single image, so we don't know if this is the case or if we'll even see this chamber in future videos. The second is an image of the monster we have seen roaming the first level of the back rooms. The title of the image simply reads, Bacteria. One word that now can clue us into what was happening to that victim the scientists found, and what this monster is. If my theory is true, then this whole timeline just gets way darker. So let's put it all together. The events in the backrooms begins in 1982 at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. A team of researchers led by Philip Heyman have created a machine that can teleport a marble using magnetic disruption. Unfortunately, when they do this, they have no idea where the marble goes, but the test does open up a new string of research to determine where it went. This research would lead to the theoretical idea of the Backrooms, an infinite space of places that have been naturally clipped out of reality due to magnetic disruption. Based on this intense amount of research, an entire foundation was established called Async, which would be directed by a scientist named Ivan Beck. Async would combine the focus of all this research and engineering to begin construction on a machine that could open a doorway to this theoretical place the research discovered. Through the 80s, this new machine would run 2 tests, which we are never shown. But on the 3rd test, a tape was recorded to document the results in order to present the research to Oak Ridge and gain more government funding. The test gets extremely close to working, and the doorway is opened for only a moment. After, Async makes the case that if they can get funding to get the doorway open, then the US can utilize this infinite amount of space as infrastructure. The tape and the results is enough for Oak Ridge to give funding to Async. Now out in California, in an underground facility, Async begins improving the device, soon calling it Project KV-31. At this facility, there are another 3 tests using KV-31, but on the 3rd test, the scientists push the machine past its limit and almost destroy the chamber, but manage to open the doorway. However, when they do this, they also create an enormous earthquake that knocked out power through the San Francisco Bay Area. A few months later, we get a new tape documenting the exploration of the scientists in the Backrooms on February 3, 1990. Along with this new exploration, the magnetic disruption caused by the doorway being opened is causing the general public to clip into the Backrooms, just like the marble did, sort of like a ripple effect from the machine. The tape captured the team finding one of these missing people who clipped into the Backrooms. After investigating, the team recovers the body and brings it back to Async for an autopsy. However, we do know that there are levels of clearance in Async, and once Ivan Beck learns of the discovery, he immediately covers up everything except for people with certain clearance. This is revealed to us in the autopsy tape, which was done 2 days later on February 5th, 1990, during which Ivan Beck is present, and the doctor who's performing the autopsy reveals the strange condition the victim was in. Apparently struck with some kind of bacterial infection that was mutated and began to decompose his body, except for certain organs. When he begins to ask questions to Ivan Beck, he is ignored, a response that would lead to rumors among the Async staff about the dangers of the Backrooms. At some point, a report was written by either Ivan Beck or one of the scientists with top-level clearance that explains that their theoretical space in the Backrooms is not safe for humans like they originally thought, mentioning that continuing the project may condemn scientists to death while exploring. Whoever wrote this report is clearly concerned and is trying to get help by putting messages into the tapes that maybe Async and Ivan Beck wouldn't notice. Saying things like, "If anybody, blame him," as referencing Ivan Beck, and while data could be inferred from these readings, nobody knew what would actually be found on the other side, referencing the theoretical research done before the doorway was opened. With the project still underway, Async starts to set up null zones which are capable of protecting exposed humans from the magnetic disruptions and potentially the bacterial infection, as well as opening up at least 3 doorways to the Backrooms. But the secretive scientists who actually go out into the Backrooms are aware of the roaming threats, as they have rigged null zones to alert Async if something foreign gets inside. Async also sets up motion detecting cameras that have captured the threats that have been heard while the scientists are working. On February 29, 1990, one scientist who lost his group managed to film something unknown to Async. The infinite space they theorized is more than just the maze of halls and rooms. The magnetic disruption is also capable of bringing in all sorts of places and buildings into the backrooms, like the house this lone scientist found and then reported back to Async. On March 11, 1990, we saw an archive taped of Async's progress so far in the backrooms. So far, they have not only discovered the lone house, but all sorts of different places that have been clipped into the backrooms. Months later, on May 7th, it was time for the government to check in on the project they had funded back in 1989. These would be scientists from the Oak Ridge lab who would come to visit Ivan Beck and take a tour of the backrooms. Without a doubt, Ivan has kept this information regarding the creatures in the backrooms classified from Oak Ridge in order to not have his project shut down. The risk would be worth it because if Oak Ridge likes what Async has done, then with new funding, Async can begin exploring the second level of the backrooms and opening doorways there. However, the day before, one scientist named Marv explored a little too far and finally captured one of the mysterious creatures with his camera. Based on the autopsy that was done to a victim and the image title in the Ko-Fi gallery, this must be the end result of the infection the autopsy discovered, where few organs are kept alive, leaving this thin, mutated monster that roams the backrooms without a mind. When Marv encounters this creature, he immediately shows a symptom which could potentially be the infection already affecting him. And since this infection is brought on by the magnetic disruptions, the hazmat suit did practically nothing because it infected the bacteria already in his body. Even more disturbing is that the knowledge of this infection is not known by the majority of scientists at Async, and probably not even Marv, meaning he is about to be a living host as he leaves the backrooms, the day right before the Oak Ridge scientists arrive. So on May 6, 1990, the Async Foundation became fully aware of this hostile threat in the backrooms, and over a short period, they would begin outfitting their mapped sectors with barricades and their null zones with blast shields for more protection. Which, even if that secures the tour for the Oak Ridge visitors, wouldn't they at least see the barricades and ask why certain sectors are now blocked by Async? We know Ivan Beck probably gave the order to put up the defenses based on the phone call we saw in the report video. But what excuse could Ivan come up with? I don't know, and maybe I might be reading a little too far into the minute details. From there, we get a 6-year jump to the original video that shows that people are still clipping into the backrooms in 1996. Our teen who entered the backrooms does make it to the second level, and there he sees the Async Foundation working from the windows. So Async will get this funding on the 7th of May regardless of what Marv captured on his camera and his symptoms he had. Signs are pointing, well, maybe not those signs, to something happening to Marv by the order of Ivan Beck, and what he captured on the tape is absolutely going to be classified. So what is going to happen next? Well, it's hard to say. With the new precautions set up by Async, I don't know if it will be enough to calm any of the scientists, like Marv, who will definitely be more hesitant about entering the backrooms. Perhaps we will see more scientists become paranoid while they work. Besides that, we know Async is going to expand into level 2, so maybe we'll see them face off against some new threat down there. There is also this scientist sneaking messages into the tapes, so maybe it's this Anthony Dawkins that was teased for the report video. And lastly, what new strategy will Ivan Beck come up with to keep the truth about the backrooms hidden from the Foundation and Oak Ridge? Or maybe we'll find out that Oak Ridge's top scientists are also aware of the threats in the backrooms. I don't know, it could be anything, and I'm excited. Honestly, what can I say about this series that no one else in the horror community has? It's done everything right, and that's why I'm talking about it. Especially since, unlike most series that need 1 or 2 videos to get going, that first Backrooms video just knocked it out of the park. Even if that was the only video made, it would still be a notable part of the YouTube horror's history. So this whole series is just like so much extra. I say this in most of my videos, but you can really tell the passion that goes into a series, and those are the ones I love to cover. And this is a shining example. It's not too drawn out, and it always gives just enough clues to push the story along while still being an effective nightmare for the viewer. I think since that one 4chan post, fans of this concept have always tried to recreate a realistic version of the Backrooms, whether it be through stories, internet series, video games, and even virtual reality. Whatever it took to enter this ominous place, not just to test their mental fortitude against the endless maze, but to experience that feeling of liminal space that the Backrooms give. And the Backrooms series by Kane Pixels does this better than all of them. It gives us a terrifying glance at something scarier than a monster, that being the effects of time. To see places once so common and full of life now sit abandoned and forgotten. This feeling we all get, especially people my age, will only become more prevalent as we get older and the world changes. And the Backrooms will always be a reminder of that unnerving truth. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. As most of you who have been watching my channel have seen, I've been experimenting with some new video ideas, editing formats, and I even got this handsome devil as an avatar now. So just trying a bunch of new things while the channel grows. If you want to stay up to date with any happenings for the channel, I suggest you follow me on Twitter, where I make most of my announcements. And if you really love Pagan Valley, then there is a link to the Patreon down below, where when you sign up, you get your name at the end of the videos. And I think that's everything besides the classic. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Tell me your thoughts on the Backrooms, and hell, why not share this video with a friend who also likes YouTube horror? Anyway, this has been Pagan Valley, and I wish you all a good evening.